From Eyewitness News, this is Newsmakers.
Governor Gina Raimondo wants to, in her words, reinvent Medicaid. Your eyes may glaze over, but consider this. Rhode Island taxpayers will spend more than $1 billion with a B on Medicaid in the current budget year. Including federal money, the tab grows to $2.7 billion. This week on the first half of Newsmakers, an early look at the proposed changes to Medicaid. Our guest, Secretary of Health and Human Services, Elizabeth Roberts. Then, he's back. Former Governor Lincoln Chafee says he's formed an exploratory committee to run for president. We break down the stunning announcement on the second half with our political roundtable. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. To my right, joining me on the panel is WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi. Secretary Roberts, really good to have you back in the program. Matter of fact, last time you were here, you were Lieutenant Governor Roberts, so it's good to have you.
Great to be here.
All right, we're going to talk entirely about this working group you have to, as we said in the opening piece here, to reinvent Medicaid. The recommendations to the governor are due at the end of this month, and I've got to tell you, it seems implausible that in just 8 weeks or so, give or take, that the state is going to change how it manages Medicaid money.
What we're going to do is start that change, and we've started it already. One of the first things the governor did, and I'm very proud to be part of it, and Dennis Keefe, the head of the Hospital Association and head of Care New England, Ira Wilson, a professor of public health at Brown and a doctor at the VA, are co-chairing this group. And the governor said, look, this needs to be a public conversation. These are issues that get dealt with in the budget every year. We have had cuts in Medicaid over several years, and some of them have had significant impacts. But they haven't been part of the public conversation. We haven't always brought our people who provide our services, who help us pay, and our insurance companies, and the people who use our system and advocate for them into that conversation in a public way, and we're doing that.
But there's a $90 million cut in the budget. So even though you're going to start that conversation, that has to be dealt with now.
Absolutely, and that's what we are doing right now. I've been at many meetings this week with different members of the working group, and we're talking about, we have a two-pronged strategy. One is to put some proposals on the table in, as you said, just a few weeks that are better than the proposals in the current budget. Right now, we're doing sort of what we have been doing, which is cutting providers. And we're still going to need to do some of that to make this budget work. But right now, we're in very active discussions with those providers, with the managed care organizations, and saying, okay, what can we do that can start us down a path to a system of care that's paid for differently? We have very high utilization of a lot of services. How do we change that paradigm so we have an affordable, high-quality system?
Well,
and it's not all about, frequently people think if you cut the budget, you're cutting quality. I would tell you right now, we are spending money because we have quality issues.
So of the $90 million into the providers, as you just said, nursing homes, hospitals, doctors, who's going to feel it the most?
Well, right now, you can we're a little bit, and that bad joke about robbing the bank. When you see the budget, you see that hospitals are our biggest expenditure in Medicaid, and so they feel it the most. Our nursing homes, we're in active dialogue with them right now saying, are there better ways for us to do this? Can we take some of this money and invest in an incentive program to change how you deliver services, reward you for helping us lower emergency room use, which is high in our population, rewards you for helping us lessen the number of people who are in hospital admissions, and help us to cut, as you saw this week with the AARP study, we still struggle with one of the highest rates of our elderly in nursing homes. And there are many reasons for that, but we need to change it because that's not always where they want to be. So they're at the table with us, and we're making some tough decisions. We're trying to make the best decisions we can. We would have cut this budget without them. I'm much happier cutting it with them.
The New York Daily News this week heralded Governor Cuomo's Medicaid miracle, they called it. They said he's found a way to control costs in New York that nobody thought was possible. What has New York done that Rhode Island isn't doing right now?
Well, and I'll be honest, we have very much modeled what we're doing right now on what New York did. When Governor Cuomo came in 2011, he convened a group very much like this and said, I need your help immediately with my current year budget, and then I want you to stay by my side helping me change this system. You see there that they have, over the last 5 years, really, that was the highest cost system in the whole country. They have really managed those costs, and they made an interesting comment that this year when the Medicaid budget went through, it was not a source of controversy. Everybody is helping to solve those problems, and we want to create that same dynamic here, and we're on that path.
Are privately run nursing homes in Rhode Island, are they too expensive?
They are expensive. This is a high-cost part of the country.
Too expensive.
I want them to be the right price to provide the quality of care that we need. And we are struggling and working with them to try and figure out how we can help them provide services to the people who need it. And what's most valuable to us is make sure only the people who need it are in the nursing homes. So I would love to have an alternative to saying, we need your help, so we're going to ask you for a rate cut. I'd love to have an approach that helps us keep people out of nursing homes.
Is there an eligibility problem in terms of nursing homes? Are you saying there are people in nursing homes right now that don't belong?
We still have more liberal, if you want to call it, eligibility here in Rhode Island, both for medical need, and we also are discovering, and we're looking at this right now, that some of our financial, it's not about your direct income, but your ability to shelter assets is a little bit easier in Rhode Island than some other places. We're looking at those issues. At the same time, we need to make sure people have safe, comfortable alternatives in the community, and we haven't necessarily invested in those. So this is probably, to be honest, our toughest issue because we cannot have poor quality nursing homes. We need to have them. Those are the most vulnerable people. We need to pay for those services appropriately, but we also need to invest in services in the community. And as you see, we've continued to try to do that, and we haven't successfully done it yet.
Virginia Burke of the Nursing Homes Lobby has been pushing back pretty hard at some of this group's work. She said in the Journal recently, Rhode Island's Medicaid includes a much higher share of elderly and disabled people as a percentage of all the people covered compared to other states. And she said, quote, our challenge is primarily demographics, not excessive spending. Do you agree with that or disagree?
So we do have challenging demographics. We're number one in the country in the number of percent of our elderly that are actually over 85. But I do not accept that as an excuse for higher numbers of people in hospitals, higher numbers of people in emergency rooms, programs, lots of unmet behavioral health need that manifests itself in high-cost placements. So where I disagree with her is that I think there are many people over 85 that we haven't given a safe alternative in the community that can support them more independently. So we need to work together. Virginia and I have a good relationship, and I understand her challenges right now because we don't have a good creative alternative to help change that system and really get it moving, and that's our goal.
The state controls actually the number of nursing home beds. It's set out, I believe, in regulations on the capping the number. Should we just allow fewer nursing home beds out there? Should the state move in through regulations and say we're going to have fewer nursing home beds and we're going to have to find other ways to take care of people?
So we have actually capped the number of nursing home beds in our state for a number of years now, I think almost as long as I've been in public office. Not that I'm in public office anymore. And we've actually had a declining number because some nursing homes have closed. So I don't disagree with her. We have more nursing home beds than we need. And it's one of the things they've proposed is how can we look at shrinking the number of beds because we have more than we need for the community we serve. So I agree with her on that, and we're looking at strategies to do that.
One of the goals listed on the Reinventing Medicaid website is to crack down on waste, fraud, and abuse. How much is there? Have you calculated what the savings would be if you went after that?
So we're doing that right now. We are already, with the federal government's support, before I got here a few years ago, created a program integrity office. We have instituted a number of changes in terms of computerization and review of claims paid, eligibility, a lot of issues like that. Blue Cross has actually reached out and said, we've made some major improvements in our system. We'd be happy to share them with you. So right now, Bruce McIntyre, who heads up that unit, is looking at a number of approaches. And actually, I sat down with Mike Stenhouse, who I think was a little surprised I sat down with him.
Now, he's from the Center of Freedom and Prosperity.
Yes, and he had some ideas which we are looking seriously at as well.
And one of the ideas that he has raised is other states have brought in third-party vendors to check eligibility. Would you consider that?
So we actually, that's one of the very issues we talked about, and one of the things we are already doing in our new computerized eligibility and enrollment system is we are doing monthly checks with outside, which is exactly what these vendors do, and our old system couldn't. So we do checks with Department of Labor and Training, checks with federal government databases on a monthly basis. But we are, in fact, looking at his proposal, which is to put some outside vendors on top of that to look at some of our other program eligibility statistics. So we're assessing that right now to see if the investment is worthwhile given the other improvements we've got in our system.
You know, Madam Secretary, I like to create charts about Medicaid. Under state law, your office is required to submit the annual Medicaid expenditure report by March 15th. It's now almost a month later. The report still hasn't been released. Why hasn't your office complied with that law?
So you are correct. We got a bit bumped off topic by this project that the Reinventing project, and so we are late with that report. A lot of that data has been being reviewed in these public meetings, but we will have it out because I know you are a big aficionado of that report as soon as we can.
Is there a timeline on that? Will it be, because we're using almost 2-year-old data is the basis for this conversation about Medicaid, at least for those of us in the public who don't have access to what your office has.
Right, and we had a systems change, and we've had a number of systems changes in 2014 that have slowed us down a bit. It's not just the administration change. So I'm hopeful that will be in the next 3 to 4 weeks, but I can't guarantee you exactly what the date is.
As I started this line of questioning with a timeline you have until the end of this month, what if you can't get everybody at the table to agree? What if you don't have a plan by the end of April? What happens?
When we began this process, I said to the group, actually, I don't expect all of us to agree. We are going to have, and it is not a group that we have asked to vote. We hope to have a lot of support from that group, and I, along with my senior staff and our co-chairs, are talking to anybody who wants to talk, who's got ideas to place forward. We created this group as a way of getting information, getting insights, building working relationships. But we didn't say to them, you have to commit to agreeing to everything we propose. We will have a proposal in 3 weeks because we need to submit a budget article to make improvements to the proposal that was put in the budget on March 12th. It is also in that executive order that on July 1, we will have a longer-term report on where the Medicaid program is going to go and state-financed health care in general. And that's going to be really a work plan for this administration over the next almost 4 years, how we are going to transform this delivery system to improve quality and a much more sustainable cost. It is definitely doable, and I'm excited to be able to have an article like was written in the New York Daily News about Rhode Island in a few years.
I'm curious, you made your career as a policy wonk and advocate, creating policy, but now you've shifted. Now you're implementing policy. You're operationally in charge of it, making these difficult decisions, how it's going to be run. What's been the biggest surprise to you in switching between those two roles?
So it's something I had seen from outside, but I'm very aware that you're managing daily crises. You have 24-hour operations under my authority. There are lots of things going on, thousands of employees, and at the same time trying to keep a view on where do we want to go, how do we change our system. So how do you move from crisis management to really long-term change that is needed? And there's a good team down there, and we are getting it done, but it's very challenging.
Madam Secretary, you must know this question is coming your way. You were Lieutenant Governor for 2 terms, one of them under Governor Chafee, who surprised everyone this week by announcing he's got an exploratory committee for a run for president in 2016. What was your reaction to that?
I was as surprised as everyone else initially, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized the man that I worked with is a man of great principle and real commitment to issues. And you saw in his announcement, he has a very strong feeling about international affairs, about peace in the world, and he is a man committed to public service. So the more I thought about it, the less surprised I was.
Will you support him?
I am so busy thinking about other things. I am not thinking about the presidential campaign right now. I think we've got plenty of time. I'm now a civilian. I don't have to worry about who I'm supporting and when.
Well, kind of a civilian. I'm going to put you in that category as Secretary of Health and Human Services, Elizabeth Roberts. Thank you very much for joining us. We talked a lot about Medicaid, and if you're interested in this conversation, don't miss our sister show, Executive Suite, with Peter Marino, the CEO of Neighborhood Health Plan of Rhode Island. Again, Madam Secretary, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
When we come back, we are going to be talking about Lincoln Chafee and his announcement with our political roundtable. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. To my right is WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi. He's part of our political roundtable this week. We were talking about the, I guess we could use bombshell announcement by former Governor Lincoln Chafee that he is running, he has formed an exploratory committee to run for president in 2016. I am joined by political strategist Kara Cromwell and Eyewitness News political analyst Joe Fleming. Look at this. The band is back together, and it's an odd-numbered year.
Thank you, Lincoln Chafee.
Yeah, we'll send him a fruit basket for this. All right, as you guys know, I like to go around the table with just a quick yes or no question here. Again, as I said, he's not announcing a run for president. He has announced an exploratory committee. So is he, yes or no? Do you think he's going to officially throw his hat in the ring, Ted?
Probably.
Joe?
I don't think so in the end.
All right, and Karen?
Yes.
Why don't you think so?
Well, I think what's going to happen, in order to run for president, I think he's going to explore it over the next few months, go out to Iowa, go out to New Hampshire, talk with groups, but he has to raise money and build an organization. He has to be able to show up in the polls to get into the debates. And the question is, can he do those things? I'm not sure if he can do that. Lincoln Chafee has a certain way about him. He wants to talk about issues, but it might not be attractive enough to get people to start going towards and to put him at 3, 4, 5% of the polls to get into the debates to get his message across. So in the end, I think he will not run.
Kara, you said yes.
I do. I think he's occupying a spot in the race right now that there's no one else there. So right now you have Hillary Clinton, who's the front runner, even though she's not announced. And then there's really no one else in it. So in order to have a debate, you need to have, more than one person. So unless it gets to a point where there's a crowded field, I see no reason why he can't, even if it's a shoestring budget, that he can't continue along.
And before we go on, I just want to point out we taped this program on a Friday morning. We're hearing that Hillary Clinton's going to announce on Sunday, and that's when many of you may be watching or listening to this program. Ted, is this really about him seeking the Oval Office?
I don't think so. I think Lincoln Chafee is perfectly aware it's unlikely he will be the next president of the United States. But we all know Lincoln Chafee feels there's I would argue maybe almost nothing he feels more strongly about in his whole public career than that vote over the Iraq War and that decision. It's defined him. And he is still, almost viscerally angry and aggrieved at Hillary Clinton and others who voted for it.
If you haven't heard, he didn't vote for the Iraq War.
Right. But he's very proud of that. And he said we interviewed him yesterday. Kelly Sullivan, our colleague, and I were sitting down with him, and he made very clear. I mean, he said probably more in our little interview, and as well as the other ones he had yesterday against Hillary Clinton than all the other potential Hillary Clinton opponents we've heard so far. But Iraq said it should just disqualify her.
I got one for the group. Would he win Rhode Island if he went all the way to the primary?
No.
No.
I don't think so.
I don't think he could win
Really?
a primary for governor.
No.
In Rhode Island.
That's why he didn't run. That's why he didn't run last year.
Right. So I can't imagine,
Our numbers on his favorability, his job performance were down in the 20s and 30s. I mean, I can't see him winning a primary in Rhode Island.
Well, by the way, don't forget Hillary Clinton won. We already tried this play. Hillary Clinton easily beat Barack Obama in Rhode Island, and Barack Obama was making the same case against her in a lot of ways that Lincoln Chafee will be.
She got 109,000 votes in that primary, which is outstanding. It's the highest Democratic primary ever in the state of Rhode Island. And people thought Barack Obama was going to win that primary, and she won it very convincingly.
We're hearing about a possible run from Martin O'Malley, as you point out. Kara, who does this help in this case? Does it help or hurt Hillary Clinton to have, as Ted points out, somebody who's so critical of her, who might actually be sort of hounding her on the campaign trail? Does that help or hurt her?
Oh, I think it hurts her. I think he's positioned in the race representing the far left side of the Democratic Party, kind of the peaceniks, because frankly, he's a one-issue candidate at this point, because he's taking that one vote as what's going to sustain him. I think it would hurt her because it's going to point out all of the things. He's going to point out all of the things about her that are kind of lying under the surface that people haven't really been talking about.
But those things are all going to come out against the Republican anyway. So you better to get those issues out now. So come next year, people are going to say, "Oh, we've heard that before." So it'll soften the blow when the Republicans make those shots.
I think so, but at the same time, Martin O'Malley, if he gets in a little later and is unscathed, and she's been dragged through the mud in New Hampshire and Iowa, I mean, O'Malley could win the nomination, in which case it doesn't really matter if Hillary's stronger against her.
Who's going to drag her through the mud in Iowa and New Hampshire, though, that would give her credibility in the sense of defeating her? Lincoln Chafee?
Well, and I'm not saying that he would actually beat her. I don't mean to giggle. But I am saying that, if she weaken her going into, it's a long haul.
Can we just talk about how exciting it is. The
Sorry, I
possibility
giggled.
Lincoln Chafee will stand next to Hillary Clinton and debate her,
On
perhaps repeatedly. I mean, we've done debates with Lincoln Chafee. Lincoln Chafee has interesting cadences. Lincoln Chafee will say things
That is putting it polite. I mean, it's actually, and I say that seriously, that's going to be a huge challenge for Hillary Clinton just to deal
and the
with
debate moderators.
And
as you know.
As we know, yes.
I mean, I think, and joking aside, because we know Lincoln Chafee so well, I mean, Lincoln Chafee, he will say things almost every other politician you could argue knows better than saying, or just doesn't want to take the risk of saying because it will lead to repercussions or whatever. Lincoln Chafee is a rare, someone said this to me yesterday, I think it's very smart. Lincoln Chafee is a rare politician in the Democratic Party who's not scared of the Clintons and the Clinton machine and the apparatus of how powerful the Clintons are. He doesn't care, I don't think, if he's frozen out of a Hillary Clinton White House for 4 or 8 years after this. He'll say nasty things. He already, just counting in the last, I think his interviews yesterday, he hit her on a rock repeatedly. He was talking about the Clinton Foundation donations from foreign governments, another problem for her. I think he might have even talked about the email scandal and everything. I mean, he's just, he's going straight after her in a way nobody else, I think, was willing to.
But the problem for Chafee, his biggest challenge, at least in my view, has been his inability to effectively communicate his policy and frankly, be an attack dog. We saw him try to be that a little bit against Frank Caprio in 2010. He's been a mayor. He's been a U.S. senator. He's been a governor. I mean, I got to think the leopard isn't going to change its spots at this point, that he's not going to be able to turn that boat around.
I think Lincoln Chafee is what we see all the time. I don't think anything is going to change. I think you're right in the debates. We're not sure what he's going to do, but he's going to be honest and give his own opinion. He doesn't care the repercussions that happen. So, I mean, Hillary has to be a little bit careful in those types of things. Again, if he gets that far, I mean, if O'Malley gets in the race, he's going to really push Chafee way out of the way. And Chafee may not even show up in the polls to get into the debates.
Is this about ego?
I think that's a part of it. I do. I think Lincoln Chafee, I wrote a piece for PRI.com, and the first thing I said was he does not agree with the conventional wisdom about him in Rhode Island. He doesn't agree that his governorship didn't go well. He doesn't agree that he bears a significant amount of blame for that because he doesn't even think it happened. But about his communication skills, what you just mentioned, he thinks he's the rare man of principle left in American politics, and he's gonna be the only one who will speak truth to power in the Democratic primary, and that's why he's running.
I think it's definitely about ego. And let's be real. To be successful in a presidential campaign, you need to be able to raise money. You need to be able to talk charismatically in front of a large audience like Barack Obama did so well. You need to work a living room in Iowa and shake hands in a diner and communicate your message. And all of the things I've listed above is nothing that Lincoln Chafee has been particularly good at in the past.
I think Joe,
I can't imagine the leopard's going to
Joe
take
hit
his
on
spot.
something I think that is a really important question. To the extent you put aside the idea Lincoln Chafee actually is going to win the Democratic primary nomination, it's will he clear the threshold with, it's not about us anymore, the national media, to be seen as a credible enough candidate to get attention.
But he says wacky things. He
And
says
that's in his
wacky
favor,
things.
in a
That's what I'm
quiet year.
saying. Yeah, absolutely.
But it still would be credible. You need money to start building your campaign. And he's had problems raising money even in Rhode Island. He self-funded a lot of his governor's campaign.
He said he doesn't even like to raise money. He's complained about it.
So how are you going to run for president? It's going to cost millions and millions of dollars. If he throws in a couple million, it's a drop in the bucket. He has to have the money, and I think that's going to be his biggest problem for us.
But Iowa and New Hampshire are cheap. That's one thing in his favor. You can do a lot of just wandering around. There's going to be so many reporters up there desperate for anything to write about other than the Hillary juggernaut.
The free media there is unbelievable. And because he's a gold medalist in the GAF Olympics, I mean, honestly, the reporters from Politico and The Hill will be chasing after him. And, in the age of Twitter, Ted, everybody sees everything. I think he's going to get a tremendous amount of free media just because of who he is and what he might say.
And as I like to say, Irish playwright Brendan Behan said, there's no such thing as bad publicity except your own obituary.
Right.
So
Well, they spelled his name wrong, so no 2 F's.
No 2 F's. I
anyway.
saw that yesterday.
That's right.
But keep in mind, there's going to be so many Republicans running. I think a lot of the people will be focusing on the Republicans, saying, well, Hillary's going to be the nominee. She only has token opposition, so they're not going to focus on the Democratic primary. They're going to focus more on the Republican primary. They'll mention Chafee now and then, but if they perceive that Hillary has it wrapped up, they're not going to focus on it much.
You could argue, too, I think, that there's a possibility, and I don't know how this will play out, that it could be good for Hillary Clinton. That I've seen a bunch of articles in recent months from people who know what Democrats are talking about, concerned that she'll face so little opposition, she won't be kind of in fighting form for the general election. These Republicans will have gone through a pummeling in the primaries, and
Right.
she'll have just waltzed through. Lincoln Chafee, to the extent if he remains viable and is in the debates and is saying things, he could force her to answer difficult questions about Iraq, bring up things that wouldn't otherwise be discussed, give her, throw some haymakers in the debates or whatnot. Maybe that would be good for Hillary Clinton if she's going to be the nominee, to have had a little more opposition in the primary.
So this could be an opportunity for Republicans, really, to make sure whoever they nominate is more centrist, because the party is always going to, and these primaries usually get the more right person comes out of it, except for, Romney, of course. And this could be an opportunity for them to pick kind of a good candidate for them.
We have less than a minute left. Ted, do you think the White House is involved in any way with this? The
I
current
don't. I
administration?
think the White House needs Hillary Clinton to win, because so much of Barack Obama's legacy is now on things like executive orders.
Did you ask him if he...
I did. He said he has not talked to Obama about it.
All right, Karen, what do you think?
I have to believe that if they had a problem with it, we would have heard about it by now.
Yeah, but don't you think Lincoln Chafee will go, well, I want to do it, so I'm going to do it anyway?
He might, but in a lot of ways, it benefits the White House if there is a more left-leaning candidate on the ticket.
30 seconds, forget the White House. What about the Chafee house? Do we know how Stephanie Chafee feels about this?
He said she's very supportive of it. Obviously, we all know Stephanie has a lot of money, and that has helped to fund Lincoln Chafee's campaign significantly. So to the
We'll need
extent
more than
she's on
that.
board, but he said that. He said what he could provide is a drop in the bucket.
All right, Ted Nisi, Joe Fleming, Kara Cromwell. This was fun. A nice treat out of the blue. If you missed it, it's online, WPRI.com. I'm Tim White. We'll see you next week on Newsmakers.